The heart monitor made this soft ticking sound, like a metronome left running in an empty room. I could feel it more than I could hear it. Each pulse of that machine kept time with my breath. One breath, one beep. Another breath, another beep. I don't know how long I'd been sitting there, but the plastic chair beneath me had molded to my shape and my legs tingled from not moving. Outside the window, it was raining in that quiet Georgia way, just a slow, polite drizzle. The blinds were tilted half shut, so the morning light cut stripes across my mother's bed, landing on her hand, still, cool, the skin almost translucent. The kind of pale you only see when someone's halfway to leaving. I'd been holding her fingers for a while. They didn't hold back. My sister was by the window. Her reflection ghosted in the glass, arms crossed, one foot twitching in place like it wanted to run. She hadn't said much since the night before, just little comments about what kind of flowers Mom might have wanted. Lilies, probably, or maybe blue hydrangeas, the ones she used to clip from the backyard and press into books. My name is Meredith. I'm 43 years old, and this is how I turned their betrayal into my blueprint for power. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The silence broke when my sister moved. She stepped across the linoleum like her heels were echoing too loud, even though she was wearing those hospital-issue slippers. The ones they hand out when your loved one is dying and you forget to pack anything but your toothbrush. She leaned in close to Mom's ear. Her hair fell forward, brushing the pillow. And then I heard her say something. Not the words, just the tone, the softness of it, the way her voice cracked and dropped low like a secret. The monitor gave one last beep, then nothing. Just that long, flat tone that doesn't pause, doesn't give you a second to catch up. I didn't scream. I didn't say her name. I didn't even move. I just looked at my sister as she straightened up, and I swear to you, her face wasn't broken. It was calm, composed, almost relieved. The nurse rushed in, then another one. They went through the motions. Chest compressions, oxygen, trying to bring back what was already gone. But they knew. I think they knew before they even touched her. She was gone. And my sister, she started crying. Loud, messy sobs into the sleeve of her sweater. I stood there, still clutching my mother's fingers, now cold and empty. There was something about those tears that didn't sit right. They were too fast, too practiced, like she'd been waiting for the moment, ready to turn it on. The next few hours were a blur, the kind where time folds in on itself. I remember the hum of fluorescent lights that made everyone's skin look paper thin, the rolling of metal carts down the hall, the nurse who kept apologizing for bumping my chair. People brought vending machine coffee I didn't ask for, its cardboard cups soft from being held too long. Somewhere, someone's phone rang with an upbeat ringtone that cut through the silence like laughter at a funeral. There were forms to sign. There are always forms. Death is never just an ending. It's paperwork, signatures, boxes to tick. My sister talked through all of it. She told them what funeral home we'd use. She said Mom had already given her power of attorney months ago. She said she had all the paperwork at home, signed, notarized. Her voice had authority, almost rehearsed. The kind of tone you hear in conference calls, not hospital rooms. I didn't argue. Not in that moment. I just nodded, numb, and let her take the lead. The rain outside had stopped by then. The light changed. Shadows stretched longer across the bed, reaching toward me like thin fingers. That was when I really felt alone. Not just in the room, but inside myself. Like whatever tether had been holding me together, it snapped, quiet and clean. They wheeled my mother away before noon. The hallway smelled like lemon floor wax and something metallic, blood maybe, or the residue of machines. The kind of scent that burns itself into your memory, whether you want it or not. I remember walking past the nurse's station. One of them, a young woman, early 20s, dark braids, looked at me with this strange expression. Like pity, but also something else. Recognition, maybe, or guilt. I should have stopped. I should have asked if she'd heard what my sister said, but I didn't, not yet. Because grief makes cowards out of even the most curious. Instead, I went home to my mother's house. Ours, technically. The one we grew up in just outside Savannah. Red brick, creaky floors, the smell of old cedar and lemon cleaner, those same pale green curtains in the kitchen she'd had since '92. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. It felt like the walls knew. There was a casserole on the porch. Someone from church, probably. Our fridge would be full of them soon. Tuna bakes, lasagnas, sympathy shepherd's pie, the cycle of comfort disguised as obligation. We weren't hungry. Inside, the house had this weighted quiet, a silence so thick it felt like you could trip over it. The clock in the hallway ticked louder than usual, and every creak of the floorboard sounded like a question no one wanted to ask. That night, my sister sat at the dining table with a manila folder open in front of her. She didn't ask if I wanted to see it. She just started reading things aloud. Health directive, power of attorney, durable medical decision form. Her voice was clipped, businesslike, detached. The overhead light buzzed faintly. The ceiling fan turned slow circles that made the shadows crawl across the wallpaper. I was still standing, hands on the back of a chair. Me. When? Did she give you all this? She didn't look up. Elise. March. Me. March? She was still gardening in March. She wasn't even sick. Elise. She wanted to be prepared. You know how she was. Her tone had this finality to it, like the conversation was already over. But something in me tightened, because March was the same month I'd taken Mom to her cardiology appointment in Macon, the one where the doctor said she was stable, no urgent issues, just keep doing what she was doing. That same week, Elise had been in Florida for a conference, or at least that's what she told me. I could still picture that day, the white plastic chairs in the waiting room, Mom's floral blouse, her hand reaching for mine when the doctor smiled and said, "You're doing great." Her pulse was strong. Her laughter was strong. Everything about her was still living. So why March? Why then? Me. Did you forge them? Elisa's head snapped up. Her lips parted just slightly. But her eyes, they didn't flinch. Elise. What did you just say? Me. Did you forge these? Or make her sign them when she didn't understand? There was a long pause. The hum of the fridge filled the room. Outside, a dog barked once and then nothing. Just the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Elise closed the folder slowly, deliberately. Elise. I don't know what kind of grief-crazy theory you're spinning, but you better stop before you embarrass yourself. Her words were sharp, but her voice stayed low, measured, controlled. I didn't answer, because something inside me had already shifted, something cold, clean, dangerous. She'd whispered something to our mother, and then the flatline. That wasn't a coincidence. It was a trigger. I didn't know what she said. Not yet. But I knew what it did, and I would find out. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, half lit by the TV glow, watching the local news flicker through stories that meant nothing. A car crash on I-16, a high school football score, a feel-good segment about rescued kittens. The kind of noise people use to drown out the real noise in their heads. Every few minutes, I looked down the hall toward Mom's bedroom. Her slippers were still beside the bed. Her perfume still hung faintly in the air, lavender and something powdery. It made my chest ache. I thought about Elise's face when the monitor went flat. The stillness in it. Not shock, not sorrow, just relief. And suddenly, that relief looked a lot like victory. I replayed that moment again and again, the whisper, the silence, the tone. My mind kept inventing words to fill the blank. Maybe it was confession. Maybe it was command. Maybe it was the truth. Whatever it was, it killed something in me too. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to just mourn my mother. I was going to find out what Elise said, and why she looked so calm when the world ended. ChatGPT said, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. Every drawer I opened breathed her scent. Lavender sachets, old paper, the faint tang of Vicks that clung to the wood like memory itself. Her glasses were still on the side table, folded neatly, arms slightly bent where she'd once repaired them with a dab of superglue. A coffee cup sat in the sink, lipstick faint on the rim, its ring of residue dried to a perfect circle. I stood in the kitchen the next morning, letting the faucet run just to fill the silence. The water splashed in rhythmic bursts, silver and constant, masking the echo of footsteps that weren't there anymore. Elise had already left, said she was going to meet with the funeral home. I didn't ask which one. I didn't ask who told her she could take the lead on any of this. I just watched her car pull out of the driveway, her taillights disappearing around the curve of our cul-de-sac, and then I locked the door behind her. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home echoed like a decision. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But it's hard to cry when you don't believe what you're being shown. Grief is supposed to feel sharp, raw, immediate, but what I felt was confusion, wrapped in suspicion. The house felt staged, like a set someone had designed to look lived in. I walked from room to room touching things as if to prove to myself that they still existed. Her cardigan on the back of the recliner, the half-finished crossword puzzle on the coffee table where the last word she'd filled in, faith, looked too symbolic to be coincidence. The phone started ringing before noon. A cousin from Charleston, an old friend of Mom's from church. People who meant well repeating the same lines like they were reading off a sympathy script. She always spoke so highly of Elise. She said Elise was her rock. She told me Elise was handling everything. Every word pressed against me like a weight, because I'd been the one driving her to appointments, ordering her pills from the pharmacy, sitting with her through the low blood sugar episodes and that fall she'd taken last Thanksgiving when she slipped on wet leaves. Elise sent birthday cards from conference hotels. She showed up in full makeup and a fresh manicure every 6 weeks, made a scene at brunch, and then flew back to Atlanta like a visiting dignitary. But now she was the daughter everyone remembered, and I was the shadow. That afternoon, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee gone cold, watching the neighbor's flag shift in the wind. The world kept moving, cars driving past, kids on bikes, while mine stood still. Every few minutes, I glanced toward the road, half expecting Elise's car to return, half dreading it. The funeral home called at sunset. They asked for confirmation on the casket choice, said Elise had already picked out a mahogany one befitting her grace. Phrasing stung. It sounded like something Elise would say herself. I mumbled approval and hung up. Then I sat there for a long time, watching the porch light flicker against the moths, realizing I was letting her take control again. The next morning, the meeting with the estate attorney came. I didn't speak during most of it. The office smelled like lemon polish and printer toner. A muted clock ticked somewhere behind me, and every sound felt magnified. The rustle of Elise's papers, the squeak of the attorney's leather chair. Elise arrived in black slacks and a gray blouse, hair tied in a low bun, holding a slim leather folder like it was a briefcase. She moved with purpose. She had that confidence that comes from knowing people will believe you. I came in behind her, still in the cardigan I'd slept in, the hem wrinkled from being twisted in my fists through the night. The attorney, a man named Ralston with silver hair and a Yale diploma on the wall, shook her hand first. His handshake lingered, professional and deferential. Elise, we'd like to begin the probate process as quickly as possible. I have all the documentation, including the revised will. Me. Revised? Ralston adjusted his glasses. His voice was polite, neutral, the way people talk when they assume the situation's already settled. Ralston. Yes. Your mother updated her will back in May. Miss Holloway, he gestured toward Elise, was listed as primary executor and medical proxy. The sound of his words barely registered at first. It was like he'd dropped a stone into deep water. You don't hear the splash until it echoes up later. Me. What about the previous version? Ralston blinked. Ralston. I'm sorry? Me. The version from last year. The one I watched her sign with Miss Demers from the notary service, where I was listed as co-executor. Is that still on file? Elise's voice cut in before he could respond. Elise. She destroyed the old one, Meredith. She said she didn't want you involved. My stomach turned, the air around me tightening. Me. She said that to you? Elise. She told me in confidence. I'm sorry if it hurts. It didn't hurt. It set something on fire. I could see Ralston checking our faces, trying to gauge who was the reasonable one. Elise, with her steady voice and polished nails, looked like the answer. But I wasn't here to convince him. I was here to understand how a woman who'd once kept every grocery receipt in labeled envelopes suddenly trusted only one daughter to manage her entire estate, and not the one who spoon-fed her soup when she couldn't lift a spoon. After the meeting, I sat in the parking lot with my hands gripping the steering wheel. The papers Elise had handed me were still on the passenger seat, fluttering slightly from the air vent. Photocopies of signatures, dates that didn't add up. One of them, the power of attorney form, had a notary seal from a town in Florida, Clearwater. I whispered it to myself. Me. She hadn't left Georgia in 2 years. The words hung there in the car like smoke. Something was off, and it wasn't just the documents, it was that whisper. It kept replaying in my mind, an endless loop. The way Elise leaned in, the way the monitor stopped, the sound of the flatline that didn't wait for an answer. I picked up my phone, dialed the hospital, asked for the nurse on duty during my mother's final hour. They transferred me twice, once to reception, once to patient services, whatever that meant. Each hold tone buzzed through me like static, stretching the seconds until I nearly hung up. Then finally, a voice. Nurse. This is Callie. Me. Hi. You were the nurse assigned to room 311 last week, Elaine Holloway? There was hesitation. Callie. Yes, ma'am. I was. Her tone softened at the word was. Me. I need to know if anything unusual happened right before she passed. A pause. The kind of silence where you know the truth is being weighed. Callie. Your sister was speaking to her, whispering something. My pulse thudded in my ears. Me. Did you hear what she said? Callie. Not clearly, but I do remember this. Her voice dropped lower, careful. Callie. Your mother had a strong reaction. Her heart rate spiked, then it flatlined. Me. You saw that? Callie. I was monitoring from the desk. I came in as soon as I saw the spike, but by then, she didn't finish. I closed my eyes. Me. Thank you. That's all I needed. I could hear her exhale on the other end, slow and uncertain. Callie. There's one more thing. I shouldn't say it, but your mother had a personal effects bag. There was a voice recorder in it. The world around me went still. Me. Recorder? Callie. Yes, one of those little digital ones, the kind people use to leave memos. I turned it in with her belongings. Your sister signed for the bag. I didn't remember seeing it, but Elise had taken the bag home, and she hadn't mentioned it once. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there staring through the windshield. My reflection looked different in the glass. Sharper, colder. Like someone who'd stopped accepting the story she'd been given. Then I started the car. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every red light stretched like it was testing me. The sky had turned the color of dull pewter, the kind of gray that presses down on you. When I pulled into the driveway, Elise was in the backyard garden, kneeling in the dirt with a pair of shears. She was cutting rose stems, our mother's roses, the same ones Mom used to hum over while trimming. Me. Where's the recorder? She didn't even turn. Elise. What recorder? Me. The one they gave you with her things. Callie said you signed for it. Her hand froze mid-cut. Then she looked up, squinting against the sunlight. Elise. It must have been a mistake. I didn't see any recorder. Her voice didn't waver, but her eyes... They flicked left, almost imperceptibly, toward the shed. That was all I needed. I didn't say another word. I went around the side of the house, heart hammering. The grass brushed against my jeans, the scent of soil and roses sharp in the air. The old metal door to the shed groaned as I yanked it open. Inside, the air was warm and heavy. Dust motes drifted in thin beams of light cutting through the slats. And there it was, the personal effects bag, floral cloth, frayed at the corners, the one Mom had carried to the hospital. I crouched and unzipped it. Socks, her reading glasses, a plastic rosary, a folded scarf that smelled faintly of her perfume, and buried deep inside, the recorder. I pulled it out, thumb trembling as I pressed the power button. One file, time-stamped 2 days before she died. My breath caught. I pressed play. Mom's voice filled the shed like the air itself had been waiting to carry it. Mom, if you're hearing this, Meredith, it means Elise told you something I couldn't fix in time, something cruel. I want you to know, I never believed her. Not really. She told me things, yes, but my heart knows you. You've always been the one. Always. My legs nearly gave out. I sat down on the dusty step, clutching the recorder like it might vanish if I loosened my grip. Mom. There's a letter for you in the Bible, the one with the pressed flower. I couldn't say everything I wanted to, but I hope this helps. I love you, baby. Don't let her write your story. Her voice faded, but something inside me sharpened. I didn't cry. I stood up. I walked back into the house, the recorder still in my hand. And I knew in that moment that Elise wasn't going to get away with it. Not the whisper, not the lie, not the inheritance. She thought she'd buried the truth. But my mother had left me the shovel. The Bible was right where she always kept it. Top shelf of the bedroom closet, behind an old shoebox full of buttons and expired coupons. I had to drag the wooden chair from her vanity to reach it, the same chair she'd sat in every morning to braid her hair, its cushion still faintly indented with her shape. When I stepped up, the wood creaked beneath me, the air heavy with dust and lavender. The Bible was wrapped in a soft film of time. Leather worn thin, gold lettering faded into dull brass. It had that faint, musty scent of paper that's absorbed decades of quiet prayers. She used to read it every night, not out loud, just quietly, lips moving, eyes tracing each word, slow, deliberate, like she was brushing her fingers across something sacred. When I opened it, the pressed flower was still there. A yellow pansy, flattened and fragile, veins like spiderwebs. It was tucked between Psalms and Proverbs, exactly where I remembered. I could still see her kneeling by the creek that spring morning, her fingers dipping into the water to rinse the dirt from the stem before placing it between the pages. I was 11. Elise hadn't come that day, said it was too hot. The memory slipped through me like sunlight through water, pure, then painful. I turned the page carefully. Tucked beneath the pansy was a folded sheet of notepad paper, yellowed slightly, edges feathered with age. Her handwriting wavered, shaky but familiar, the same looping blue ink she'd used on grocery lists and birthday cards. My throat tightened as I unfolded it, the sound of paper crackling too loud in the stillness. Meredith, if Elise is reading this, then she's found a way to twist even this. But if it's you, my girl, my heartbeat, then I need you to know what happened. She came to me in March, told me things I didn't want to believe. She said you'd been hiding things, stealing from my account, planning to put me in a care home. She showed me photos, bank statements, a printout of an email. I didn't want to believe her, but she was crying and I was tired. I never signed anything she gave me willingly. If she got my signature, it wasn't with my full mind. But I knew the truth would find you, and I knew you'd find this. Love you always, Mom. I read it twice before my body caught up to what my eyes were seeing. She hadn't believed Elise. Not fully, not deep down, and she'd tried to warn me. That one line, if she got my signature, it wasn't with my full mind, felt like a lifeline thrown across the dark. My vision blurred, but it wasn't from tears. It was anger, white hot and clean, pushing through the fog that had been choking me since the hospital. That was the crack. The legal opening. The one flaw in Elise's perfect little architecture of lies. If I could prove Mom lacked capacity when she signed those papers, the entire foundation would crumble. But first, I needed to see what Elise had shown her. The fake evidence, the forged statements, the fabricated email. The search started in Mom's office. The air in there was different, stale, heavier, like the room itself was holding its breath. Dust shimmered in the slanted light. Her reading glasses sat on the desk, one arm crooked. The computer monitor reflected my own tired face, ghost-like. Her laptop was wiped, factory reset. I knew the look. Blank desktop, default wallpaper, nothing but empty folders. Elise's handiwork. But the printer, the one Elise had brought last spring to make things easier for Mom, still sat under the desk, its green light blinking, low toner warning glowing faintly. I pulled the tray open. 3 crumpled sheets. The first looked like a Wells Fargo statement. My name was at the top, but the address was wrong. A small town I hadn't lived in since college. The account number didn't match any I knew. The balance was oddly rounded, too neat. The second was worse. A printed Gmail thread between me and someone listed as placement specialist from a senior care facility in Tallahassee. The message read, "She won't know what hit her. As long as we get her signature, we can move her before Easter." My stomach twisted. I'd never written that, never even thought it, but it was believable enough, just enough, for a tired, aging woman already being whispered to by her trusted daughter. Elise had always been clever, but this was cruelty disguised as competence. I took the pages, the letter, the recorder, slipped them into a tote bag, and I drove back to the hospital. There was one more thing I needed: surveillance. Hospitals don't record inside private rooms, but the hallways? Always rolling, always watching. The administrator's office smelled of disinfectant and old carpet. I sat there for nearly an hour while the receptionist made calls, her nails tapping on the desk, her eyes darting towards me every few minutes. I kept my voice steady, calm, just another grieving daughter with a small request. Finally, the security manager appeared, tall man, mid-50s, badge clipped to his shirt pocket. His name was Jeff. His drawl was soft, slow, the kind that almost made you trust him. Jeff: "We don't usually release footage without a subpoena." Me: "I understand, but if you look at it, just look, you'll understand why I'm asking." He studied me for a long moment, like he was deciding if I was dangerous or desperate. Then he nodded. 20 minutes later, he returned, holding a flash drive between 2 fingers. Jeff, I can't give you the full file officially, but I can tell you what I saw. Me, please. Jeff, she said something to your mom, then stood there a long time. You could see her lips move. Your mother looked agitated, then the line went flat. My throat went dry. Me, did she look upset after? Jeff hesitated. Jeff, your sister? No, she looked satisfied. He placed the flash drive on the desk, slid it toward me. Jeff, you didn't get this from me. Me, you won't have to worry. Thank you. The drive felt warm in my palm, like it had absorbed something alive. Next stop, the bank. The local branch was quiet, fluorescent lights humming. The floor smelled faintly of lemon polish and ink. Carla, the manager, older woman with kind eyes and a cardigan that looked hand-knit, recognized me right away. Carla, you were the one who always brought Elaine in for her CD renewals, right? Me, yes, I need to see any account changes made in April or May. She frowned but complied, typing quickly. The keys clacked in an even rhythm. Carla, looks like she moved 2 CDs into a joint account with Elise and closed 1 savings account. My breath hitched. Me, was she here in person for that? Carla, said she was, but it wasn't you who brought her. Must have been. Her voice trailed off as she looked closer. Me, check the signature. She did, then frowned deeper. Carla, that's not her writing. The edges of the moment sharpened. Me, can you print that? Carla hesitated, glancing around, then hit print. The sheet slid out slowly, like a confession. Carla, you didn't hear it from me, but if someone forged a banking authorization, that's felony territory. I nodded, pocketing the paper. Outside, the air felt sharper, like even the world knew something had shifted. That night, I spread everything out on the dining table. The same one where we'd once carved pumpkins, folded laundry, planned holidays. The wood was scarred with knife marks and coffee rings, but tonight it looked like an evidence board. 1 pile at a time. My mother's letter, the forged bank statement, the fake email printouts, the hospital hallway footage, the voice recording. Each one told a story, and together they formed a weapon. The weight of it all was heavy, but clear. I didn't need revenge anymore. I needed justice. It was nearly 9 when Elise came home. The front door creaked, followed by the sharp scent of her perfume, floral and wine heavy. She hummed softly, probably thinking I'd be asleep. When she stepped into the dining room, she froze. Her eyes moved from the recorder to the flash drive to the open letter. Her face drained of color. Elise, why are all the lights on? You look like you're planning a seance. Me. Close enough. Her purse strap slid off her shoulder. The silence between us thickened. Elise, you don't want to do this. Me. You already did. She took a step closer, voice tightening. Elise, Mom was confused. She didn't know what she was saying. Me. She knew exactly what she was saying. Elise, you're going to ruin everything she planned. Me. No, I'm going to restore what you destroyed. Her voice cracked, finally. Elise, you think people are going to believe you? After everything? After all those years you spent moping around this house like a servant? Me. I wasn't a servant. I took a slow step forward, my voice steady. Me. I was a witness. Her jaw clenched. She looked down at the letter again, at Mom's looping handwriting, and for the first time, her mask slipped. Without another word, she grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. The slam rattled the window panes, but I didn't chase her, because I already knew where she was going, to the estate attorney, to the funeral director, to anyone she thought she could still manipulate. But it was too late. The truth had already spoken. Through ink, through tape, through every quiet thing she thought she could erase. And I wasn't going to let it die in a shoebox or a voice recorder. I was going to bring it to light, where it belonged, The morning of the memorial, the world felt still. No birds, no cars, just that kind of silence that feels thick enough to press against your chest. It wasn't peace. It was waiting. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. I stood in front of my mother's mirror, the one with the thin crack running down the side of the frame where Elise once slammed a drawer in high school. The reflection staring back at me didn't look like the woman who'd sat the helpless at a hospital bedside. My face looked pale, yes, but steadier. There was focus in my eyes, not grief, a kind of clean purpose that almost frightened me. The black dress I wore was one of hers, pressed and mended at the hem. I'd ironed it until the seams were sharp enough to cut. I tied my hair back, smoothed it once, and painted my lips the same muted rose shade Mom always wore to Sunday service. The act felt ritualistic, like putting on armor built from memory. When I buttoned the last clasp, I caught a faint whiff of her perfume rising from the closet. Lavender and talc softened by years. It made my chest ache, but it also steadied me. I wasn't walking into that church as the daughter Elise had painted me to be. I was walking in as my mother's witness. The church was one of Savannah's oldest Methodist sanctuaries. White steeples stabbing through a sky washed pale by morning light. The brick steps gleamed from a fresh scrub, and inside the air was thick with the scent of lilies and candle wax. Someone had lit a dozen votives along the altar rail. Their flickers wove shadows across the stained glass. People filled every pew. Neighbors, church friends, faces from old photographs. Their murmurs rose and fell like the low tide outside the riverfront. I moved through them quietly, nodding at condolences that felt like echoes from another world. Elise stood near the pulpit, greeting people with her perfect smile, her voice pitched to that professional sweet register she used when she wanted to control a room. She wore navy, not black, a deliberate choice. Symbolism disguised as taste. Not grief, but authority. The composed daughter. For a brief flicker, when she spotted me in the doorway, I saw something raw behind her eyes. Panic, recognition. Then she recovered, turning back to the small crowd as though I were just another guest. I took my seat near the aisle. My purse rested in my lap, heavier than it should have been. Inside, the flash drive, the recorder, the folded letter. I could feel their presence like a pulse against my palm. Proof in waiting. The memorial wasn't supposed to be a confrontation, but somewhere between the lilies, the candles, and Elise's poised smile, it had already become one. The pastor began speaking, words about light, faith, eternity. I barely heard them. They blurred into background hum, a wash of polite holiness. My heartbeat synced with the slow rhythm of the organ, each note vibrating through the wooden pew beneath me. When Elise stood, the shift was immediate. Heads turned, phones lowered, even the air changed. Elise. Mom was my best friend, my mentor, my safe place. She trusted me with everything. Her voice trembled perfectly on cue. A few people dabbed their eyes. Elise continued, gaze lowered, tone angelic. Elise. She taught me how to stand tall, how to make hard choices when others couldn't, even when people misunderstood her decisions. Her head lifted, her eyes met mine. The pause was theatrical, just long enough for everyone to follow her gaze. Elise. She knew in her heart that I would protect what mattered most. The lie shimmered in the light, a neat, glittering thing that almost sounded like truth. That was when I stood. Not fast, not dramatic, just deliberate. Enough movement to shift the air, to draw eyes. The pastor blinked, confused. Elise's mouth froze mid-sentence. Me. Sorry to interrupt, but there's something my mother wanted you all to hear. A ripple of murmurs. Heads turned. Elise's face drained of color. Pastor. Meredith, perhaps this isn't the time. Me. It's exactly the time. I walked to the small podium beside the pulpit. The floorboards creaked under my heels. One sound cutting through the hush. I set my purse down, opened it, and pulled out the recorder. The red light blinked once when I pressed play. Mom's voice filled the church. Soft, trembling, but alive. Mom. If you're hearing this, Meredith, it means Elise told you something I couldn't fix in time. I want you to know I never believed her. You've always been the one. Always. The sanctuary changed shape. A single gasp echoed near the back, then another. Mom. She told me lies, yes, but my heart knows you. Silence followed. A silence that wasn't grief this time. It was electricity. Then I lifted the small projector I'd borrowed from the hospital admin office, set it beside the podium, plugged in the flash drive. The screen flickered to life on the wall behind me, grainy but clear. The hallway footage, Elise leaning over our mother's bed, her lips moving, her hand brushing the sheet. The monitor's pulse quickening, then flattening into a line. The sound, that long, unwavering tone, filled the room like judgment itself. Elise took a step forward, shaking her head. Elise, this is manipulation. That's not proof of anything. Me, no? Then maybe they'll prefer written proof. I pulled out the folded letter, the one I'd found beneath the pressed flower. The paper trembled in my hand only because I wanted everyone to see the handwriting, the loops, the slant. Me, my mother's own words, verified by her bank. She said you forged her signature. She said she was coerced. A dozen whispers erupted at once. Disbelief, shock, the soft sound of someone's hand covering their mouth. I turned toward Ralston, the estate attorney, who was sitting stiffly 2 rows back. His tie looked too tight now. Me, you witnessed those documents, right? The ones she brought you in May, the ones signed in Florida? Ralston blinked hard, his face blanching. Me, my mother was in Georgia that day, but I bet Elise didn't mention that. He stood abruptly, muttering something about needing to review the file. The tremor in his hand told the rest. Elise's composure cracked. Elise, you're destroying her memory. Me, no, you already did. I'm just cleaning up the evidence. I pressed play again. One final time. Mom. Don't let her write your story. The words echoed through the church, then hung there, fragile and absolute. People were standing now, some in shock, some in judgment. A woman from Mom's church group crossed herself. Another shook her head slowly, whispering to her husband. The pastor tried to step forward, murmuring something about prayer, but even he seemed unsure who to pray for. The energy in the room had shifted, away from grief toward truth. Elise looked around, eyes darting from face to face, searching for an ally. She found none. One woman, her coworker from the firm in Atlanta, quietly stood, gathered her purse, and slipped out the side door. Elise reached for the microphone again, her hand trembling. Elise, you think this makes you righteous? You think she would have wanted... Me. She wanted peace, and now she has it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply set the mic down, the soft click of it echoing in the sanctuary. Then I turned and walked down the aisle. The whispers followed. Low at first, then swelling. My heels clicked against the old wood, steady, unhurried, the rhythm of something being set right. By the time I reached the open doors, sunlight spilled across the threshold. Behind me, I heard Elise's sobs, raw and unfiltered, breaking through the murmur of voices. But no one went to her. Not one person. The sun hit my face. Warm, forgiving. The smell of salt drifted in from the river beyond the city. Somewhere nearby, a church bell began to chime noon. I took a long breath, the kind that fills every corner of your lungs, the kind you only take when you've come back to yourself. Then I walked toward the parking lot, the wind lifting the hem of my dress, the weight of the recorder suddenly light in my hand. That night, I sat at my mother's kitchen table, the same table where she'd written checks and clipped coupons, and filled out a formal complaint for the county clerk. I attached digital copies of everything, the forged bank documents, the voice recording, the footage. Carla from the bank signed an affidavit first thing the next morning. The notary from Clearwater confirmed over the phone that she'd never met my mother. One signature at a time, Elise's web began to unravel. By Friday afternoon, Ralston called. His tone had changed, no longer condescending, just weary. Ralston. Meredith, the probate proceedings are suspended pending investigation. Elise won't be able to touch the estate until this is resolved. I thanked him, then sat there in the stillness after he hung up. Weeks of manipulation, months of forged care, whispers and lies wrapped in silk, all undone by the truth my mother left behind. I looked around the kitchen, the floral curtains, the clock ticking softly above the stove, the faint trace of her lavender lotion lingering on the air. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel anger or grief, just quiet. The kind of quiet that feels earned. She had known I'd find my way here. She'd trusted me with the breadcrumbs, the Bible, the letter, the recording, the proof. And as I sat there, the evening light pooling gold across the table, I finally understood what she'd meant. She hadn't left me to fight Elise. She'd left me to finish the story. The formal investigation took just under 6 weeks. During that time, Elise went quiet. No calls, no emails, no late-night texts that sounded like apologies dressed in barbed wire. She didn't even come by the house. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was curdled. It had that sour stillness of something that isn't over, just dormant. I could almost hear it breathing beneath the surface. The hum of lawyers drafting responses, the whisper of denial sharpening its teeth. I knew what she was doing. Lawyering up, stalling, building walls of paperwork and posture, hoping the truth would drown beneath enough formalities to seem debatable. But what she underestimated, what she would never understand, was how powerful a mother's voice could be. Those few quiet recordings, those short sentences, had more weight than all the notarized lies she could ever produce. They weren't just proof, they were presence, and that kind of truth doesn't fade under legal language. It echoes. When the county surrogates court finally called, it was mid-November. The sky was pale, the air sharp with the smell of cold rain and courthouse dust. The case had moved faster than anyone predicted. Unusual, they said. But maybe truth doesn't like to wait. I sat on a wooden bench outside courtroom C, the varnish cracked from decades of elbows and nerves. Lawyers buzzed past in sensible shoes, their briefcases heavy with other people's disasters. The building had that old Georgia government smell, dust, coffee, and paper older than some of the clerks who carried it. I hadn't been inside this courthouse since renewing my driver's license 6 years earlier. Back then, I was just another woman waiting her turn. Today, I was waiting for something else entirely. Acknowledgement. When they called my name, the world seemed to quiet. I stood, smoothed the front of my skirt, and walked in like someone stepping onto a stage they didn't ask for but had already memorized the script to. Elise sat at the table on the left. Her hair was straighter than usual, flat and heavy against her shoulders. Her face was pale, lips glossed but tight, like someone who hadn't slept, or maybe someone pretending they'd slept just fine. She wore beige, an intentional color, the tone of neutrality, of control. It looked like denial in fabric form. Her attorney sat beside her, whispering low. He looked tired already. The judge, a woman named Ellis, didn't waste time. She had silver hair, cropped close, and eyes that could probably see through smoke. Her tone was clipped, her presence steady, a metronome in the chaos. Judge Ellis. We've reviewed claims of undue influence, forged documents, and conflicting witness accounts regarding the deceased's estate and final wishes. She glanced from one table to the other, her voice echoing slightly off the paneled walls. Judge. Miss Holloway, she looked at me. You've submitted several pieces of evidence, audio recordings, notarized affidavits, and security footage. Is there anything you'd like to add to the record? I stood, every motion deliberate. My pulse thudded low but even. Me. Just this. From my bag, I pulled out the Bible, the same one that had lived on the top shelf for years, still soft from her hands, the pansy still pressed inside like a secret she never meant to bury. Me. My mother left this note. Her handwriting, her words. She knew Elise would lie, and she trusted me to find the truth. I stepped forward and handed it to the clerk. The paper looked so small in her hands, just one page, blue ink on yellowed lines. But it carried more than ink. It carried weight. Judge Ellis read it silently. The courtroom seemed to lean in. No one spoke. You could hear the flick of her page turn, the breath she held halfway through. When she finished, she didn't sigh or frown. She just set it down carefully, like something fragile. Judge, thank you. Then she turned to Elise. Judge, Miss Holloway, do you have a response to this evidence? Elise hesitated. Her lawyer leaned close, whispered something, probably something rehearsed, a denial, a deflection. But when she opened her mouth, nothing came out at first. Her throat worked once, twice, then she stood. And something inside her cracked. Elise. She was always the favorite. The words weren't strategic. They weren't defensive. They were raw, a confession disguised as accusation. Elise. No matter what I did, I was never enough. Her voice broke on that last word. It echoed, small and sharp, through the wooden room. Judge Ellis. Miss Holloway. Elise kept talking, like she couldn't stop. Elise. She gave everything to Meredith. Attention, time, love. I was the one with a career, a life. I didn't stay behind to play nursemaid. Her lawyer tugged gently at her sleeve, whispering, sit down. She didn't. Elise. And still, it wasn't enough. Silence fell, the kind that pulls every atom of air out of the room. The only sound was the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights. Judge Ellis didn't react right away. She just nodded once, crisp and final, as if she'd already known what she would decide. Judge, given the overwhelming evidence of undue influence, the will signed in May is hereby nullified. The original 2022 version shall be reinstated. Executor role reverts to Meredith Holloway. Power of attorney documents submitted by Elise Holloway will be forwarded to the county prosecutor's office for review. 3 clean wraps of the gavel. Each one like a closing door. Final. Irreversible. I didn't look at Elise. I didn't have to. The sound of her breathing told me everything. It was shallow, uneven. The weight of what she'd done had folded her in half. No outburst, no denial, just smallness. When the bailiff called next case, I gathered my folder and walked out, not with vengeance, not with victory, but with something purer, clarity. The kind that feels like standing in sunlight after years underground. Outside, the courthouse steps gleamed with rain. My heels clicked against the stone as I descended, each step pulling me farther from the lies that had kept me bound. When I got home, the house felt different. The air lighter. The walls, once heavy with tension, now hummed with quiet. The autumn sun slanted through the windows, lighting the dust like gold confetti. I stood in the living room, near the spot where Mom used to stand when she called out for dinner, and breathed in the scent of her old candle, pine and cinnamon, one she'd saved from Christmas. I lit it that morning without thinking, maybe as a signal, maybe as thanks. I opened the envelope from the court. My name, executor, sole beneficiary, the legal authority to make all final decisions. But it wasn't the authority that mattered. It was the silence that followed. The silence where I could finally hear her again. Not her voice on a recording, but her steadiness inside me. For the first time, the story belonged to me. The next day, I hosted a small memorial at the house. No choir, no organ, no speeches dressed in falseness. Just a gathering that felt real. A few neighbors came. Old church friends. One of Mom's nurses. The young one with the braids who'd once stayed past her shift just to hold Mom's hand. We sat around the dining table. No lilies this time, just wildflowers from the backyard, blue and gold, tangled and imperfect. I wore blue, not black, her favorite shade. The one she used to say made my eyes look steady like still water. We told stories. About the time she got kicked out of the PTA for arguing too passionately about bake sale pricing. About the summer she taught me how to change a tire in the rain. About her obsession with Nina Simone. And how she'd play Feeling Good on cleaning days until the whole house smelled like lemon polish and rhythm. We laughed. We cried. We let her memory move through the room like light, touching everything. I didn't mention Elise. No one asked. She'd made herself a ghost, not by dying, but by leaving truth behind her like smoke, and I didn't need to summon her anymore. Weeks later, a letter arrived, handwritten, forwarded from her condo in Atlanta. No return address, just my name and a shaky postmark, the ink blurred at the edges. I opened it slowly, like opening a wound. You win. She always loved you more. I just wanted to feel like I had something. Guess I never did. E. I stared at it for a long while. The loops of her handwriting looked smaller than I remembered, tighter. Then I folded the letter and slipped it into the back of the Bible. Not for closure, not for forgiveness, just for record. The final line in a story she tried to erase. Because in the end, I didn't need to rewrite her part. I just needed to finish mine. I lit another candle, lavender this time. Watched the flame steady itself, the wax catching light like breath. Outside, the wind brushed through the trees, scattering the last of the brown leaves. The house creaked softly, alive, but at peace. I set the Bible down on the table beside me, the same one that had started it all, and I realized this wasn't revenge. It was restoration. Mom's story, my story, the truth sealed in ink and breath and time. And I had the pen now. I'd already written the ending. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.